Toji Fushiguro was brought back from death. He returned with incredible powers. He believed he couldn't be controlled by anyone, and he simply seized control and returned for real, becoming a force that couldn't be stopped. Now, I know Gojo killed Toji, so why can't Gojo return? Actually, he can, and he will. And in today's video, we'll explain how this could happen and what might happen if he does return. So, stick to the end of the video and witness the grand return of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer ever, Gojo Satoru. But, before we start, did you know that 98.5% of you haven't subscribed yet? If you enjoy the content, subscribing really makes a difference. And if you still don't subscribe, Gojo will never come back. Now, let's dive into the video. Okay, so, JJK fans are flipping out again, like always. Undoubtedly, Geje is a magician, and you never know what trick he's gonna pull next. So, in this latest chapter, there were mixed feelings flying around. Some fans were kinda bummed about some stuff, but then there was this big hype about Gojo Satoru making a comeback. Well, sort of. Fans were going nuts about it, like, what's gonna happen next? In the latest Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 261, things picked up right where they left off last time. So, last week we saw Sukuna gearing up to let loose his domain on Todo and Yuji. If he'd managed to pull that off, they'd have been toast. Todo couldn't have swapped out of Sukuna's reach and surviving another hit from the Cursed King? That would have been a tough ask after barely scraping through the last one. Honestly, if Yuta hadn't swooped into the scene right then, game over. But lucky for them, he was standing there, being Gojo Satoru's ghost. It was a total game changer, even Sukuna was shaken. He even killed this guy himself, so he knew it wasn't Gojo. Turns out, Sukuna's gut feeling was spot on. The person in front? None other than Yuta Okkotsu. After this, Sukuna had to eat his words and apologize for underestimating him. Who knew Yuta could ditch his humanity and go on full monster mode? Now, he's in the same league as Gojo and Sukuna. And when Gojo finally cracked his eyes open, there were those stitch marks on his forehead, no mistaking it. You know those stitch marks very well, don't you? Some fans were thinking it might be Kenjaku messing with Gojo, but no, it was actually Yuta. And that twist made everyone even more hyped up. Now, how in the world Yuta ended up in Gojo's body? Well, the author Geje Akutami didn't leave us hanging. In chapter 261, they revealed the secret. Turns out, Yuta and the gang had this plan cooking before Gojo and Sukuna even started. But, let's pause for a sec. Doesn't this mean that not everyone was fully on Team Gojo? It's kinda like they had doubts about him. Not a great look for the supposed strongest, huh? Seems like some people were more worried about Gojo biting it than him coming out on top. Yuta thought, if Gojo gets knocked out, I'll jump into his body and take over. Yuta figured if Gojo ever bit the dust, it would be up to someone to step up and save the day. In this part of the story, we learn that Yuta had a sneaky plan all along. He wanted Rika to eat Kenjaku so he could get his cursed powers. Then, she could try to take over Gojo's body. Yuji and Todo weren't surprised to see Gojo back because they knew about the plan. Now, Yuta's got this cool trick called the copy technique. But, there's a catch, he can only use it for 5 minutes when his cursed friend Rika is fully in the picture. So, what happens when those 5 minutes run out? Well, that's a bit of a mystery. In the fight, Gojo had tangled with Sukuna. Things didn't go too well for Gojo, he ended up getting sliced and diced by Sukuna. Then, Yuta had his own score to settle with this guy Kenjaku. With a little help from his friend Todo, Yuta managed to take care of business and snag Kenjaku's powers. But then, Yuta tried to take on Sukuna solo, thinking he could handle it. But, he couldn't. Sukuna chopped him up just like he did with Gojo. His own body was toast, but he got a quick ticket to Gojo's body before it all went south. Stitched up and ready for action, he patched himself up good as new. Then he whisked off to the battlefield, face to face with Sukuna himself. Then the showdown kicked off with a bang as both sides whipped out their domain expansions. It's like a classic rematch of Malevolent Shrine versus Unlimited Void, and fans were eating it up. Now, Yuta's in a bit of a bind because Sukuna's domain is like an open house, no barriers at all. Gojo found ways to tweak his domain to counter it, making it smaller and tougher on the inside. But Yuta's got his own tricks up his sleeve. Yuta's got some solid family connections which might help him out big time. See, he's linked up with the Sugawara and Fujiwara families. This could be his ticket to unlocking some powerful magic thing called an open barrier domain. And that's important because he's got to deal with this scary Malevolent Shrine situation. But now, Yuta can use all of Gojo's memories and powers because of Kenjaku's tricks. So, he's probably the strongest he's ever been in Gojo's body. Yuta will now have the chance to harness Gojo's powerful abilities, limitless to its fullest potential. And he won't just get a piece of it, he'll have the whole package, including the 6 eyes, which is a big deal in this magical world. But, even with this seemingly perfect setup, there's still some uncertainty looming. Mei brings up some valid concerns. She talks about how Yuta might not have it easy, even with all these amazing powers at his disposal. The thing is, nobody really knows how this setup is going to work out. We're in uncharted territory here. There's Kenjaku's curse technique, which is at the heart of all this mess, but the details are fuzzy. Does it need to be turned on all the time, like a light switch? Or maybe it needs a little kick now and then, like a car that won't start. Heck, maybe it just needs to be used once, and that's it. But if it's the first two options, Yuta's in trouble. His own powers have a time limit. They only last for 5 minutes. So if he has to keep flicking this Kenjaku switch to stay in Gojo's body, things could get dicey. He might end up kicking the bucket for real. So there's still this cloud of uncertainty hanging over everything. Will Yuta be able to handle this newfound power without frying himself in the process? Fans can be sure that Yuta can still use Kapi even in Gojo's body. Kenjaku keeps the curse techniques of his previous hosts, like Kaori Itadori in Geto's body. This means Yuta can still use the curse techniques he copied along with Limitless. Now, Sukuna might be in trouble. Gojo's ghost is back and Yuta's controlling his body. This is bad news for Sukuna, who's thrown everything he's got into the fight. Sukuna even used his ultimate move, Divine Flame. But in chapter number 260, we find out Sukuna's energy levels are down to Yuta's and his technique is fading. If Yuta can still use his own technique in Gojo's body, Sukuna is in trouble. Chapter 261 hints that this could be Sukuna's last stand. Gojo knew how to beat Sukuna's domain before he died, and Yuta might know too. With access to all of Geto's memories, Yuta could finish what Gojo started. But I think you are forgetting something. Remember what Kenjaku said? He said, Yuta Okkotsu can't become the next Satoru Gojo. And he is goddamn right. Gojo Satoru can never be replaced. So, what next? What else? Gojo is definitely coming back. There's talk about Gojo Satoru maybe doing something similar to what Toji Fushiguro did. And that could shake things up big time in the story. To get what this might mean, let's break down how it works in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. Toji Fushiguro's comeback showed us that in this universe, folks can make a comeback in different ways. It's like they find a backdoor to life, whether it's by possessing someone else, getting resurrected, or messing around with curses. For Toji, it was thanks to Granny Ogami's Seance technique. She pulled his body or soul details from somewhere and brought him back into the picture. Okay, now Gojo Satoru is the most powerful Jujutsu sorcerer ever. His Six Eyes technique means he can see and understand stuff better than anyone else. It's like having super duper perception powers. And his powers are all tied to his soul, like they're best friends or something. So, people are thinking Yuta Okkotsu is borrowing Gojo's body for 5 minutes. When Yuta's time is up and he's gotta give Gojo's body back, maybe that's when Gojo's soul will be like, it's my turn now. And it kinda makes sense, right? Because there was this fight between Gojo and Kenjaku with Geto's body where Gojo did some stuff that made Geto's soul start moving around on its own. So, it's like souls in this world can still do stuff even if they're not in their original bodies. So yeah, the idea is that maybe Yuta giving back Gojo's body could be the kickstart for Gojo's soul to come back and take over again. Like, souls are the real thing, not the bodies they're in. And that's the gist of it, I guess. So, there's this thing about Gojo coming back. Instead of being all-powerful like before, he's just being himself. That says a lot about him. Shows he's really tough and won't give up easily. In the show, he's always been big on being true to who you are. So, his choice to come back as himself is like him sticking to his guns. Also, people are talking about what this means for power and who you really are in the Jujutsu Kaisen world. Like, what matters more, your body or your soul? It's a tricky question. If souls are really what count, then it makes sense for Gojo to come back strong, cause his spirit is super strong, way beyond just his body. If Gojo makes a comeback, it's gonna be a big deal, like, really big. He's a major player in the whole Sukuna drama. His return isn't just about him coming back, it's about shaking things up big time. With his crazy powers and smart moves, he's gonna be a serious threat to anyone in his way. So yeah, if he comes back, get ready for some serious action and drama. Considering all the stuff that's happened in Jujutsu Kaisen so far, Gojo's comeback is not too far-fetched. Bringing him back like that could really spice things up and keep us all hooked on what's gonna happen next. But we won't know for sure until it actually happens, right? So let's just sit tight and see where the story takes us.